So you know what I hate? Modern horror games. Have you heard anything good about any big horror games lately? Have you even heard anything about any big horror games at all? Yeah, there's Resident Evil, which is probably doing better than it ever has actually. But what else is there? Silent Hill hasn't had a new game in over a decade. Well, yeah, but that one's made by the same guys who made Layers of Fear, so it's gonna suck. Any hope for the Evil Within 3 is probably dead now thanks to Microsoft closing down Tango. Thanks, by the way, Microsoft! And can you even name any other big AAA horror franchises? The big studios haven't really dropped any good horror games lately, but the masses still hunger for horror. Or, at least I certainly do. And so do you if you're watching this video, otherwise why are you here? And when the big game companies don't deliver, the indie devs do. And that's basically where Crow Country comes in. I first saw it on the Nightmare Hell site that is Twitter. I looked at it, thought, oh hey, neat, and moved on with my life. But then I saw Super Horror Bro made a video on it, and at that point I actually became interested. So I went down to the depths of Steam, bought the game knowing fuck all about it, and sat down to play it. And about 8 hours later, in the middle of the night, I finished it. Don't ask why I played the entire thing in one day, I have issues. So after sinking 8 hours straight into it, it's probably gonna be more once I've actually edited this video. Was it worth it? Well, let's get into it. We play as Special Agent Mara, and don't you forget it. Now, if you've ever played a Persona game, you might have just had some traumatic flashbacks, but don't worry, this Mara is just a purple-haired girl with a gun, and not a giant green cock and balls in a chariot. You know, if you've never played Persona, you're probably pretty confused right now. It's the ancient year of 1990, and we are here at the abandoned Crow Country theme park to find the owner, Edward Crow, because he's gone missing. The gate's locked, so like any self-respecting survival horror protagonist, we immediately shoot it and make it into the park. And I immediately loved the look of the game. Obviously the graphics are great. Now, I've never played a PS1 game because I am not that crusty or old, but this is exactly how I imagined they'd look. But there's also an insane amount of detail in the environments. I'm not gonna point all of that out, you have eyes, use them, but another thing that I really like is how distinct all the rooms are. The 4 different areas all have very distinct themes, like the Haunted Hilltop is obviously themed around spooky shit, while the Ocean Kingdom is themed around... Hold on, just take a guess, come on, you'll never guess. Is it the ocean? Yes, exactly, yes! Wow, who could have guessed? But even the rooms themselves are really memorable. There's no rooms that feel like they're just there to connect other rooms, even though there's a bunch of rooms that are just there to connect other rooms. Every room has a distinct theme and purpose, and I love it. But despite how nice the park looks, it still also feels creepy. For example, the mushroom, don't blame me for that terrible pun, blame the game, feels really creepy. It's dark and ominous, and the music makes it just that little bit worse. And there isn't even anything important here. There's no danger, it's just a side room. Anyways, the other areas are currently locked, so we gotta go into the Fairytale town area, where we encounter a guy that clearly hasn't had a good day. We talk to him and he tells us that his name is Arthur, and that he was trying to get proof of something, but that whatever it was attacked him. We can give him one of the moldy medkits we found lying in the trash can, though you can also choose to not give it to him. There's not much of a point though, cause you gotta help him to continue the game. We help him back to the car and then come back. Arthur was sitting on a piece of paper with a code on it, and we can use the code to activate a nearby door. But the door is actually a fairy, and we gotta tell it the right phrase to get through, because... theme park. We obviously don't know the phrase though, so instead we go the only other way we can go. Sorry to interrupt you guys. I'm just gonna go hide out in the bathroom if you don't mind. Oh, come on! So these are the guests. They're the main enemy of the game. For now, we're gonna avoid them like they've got the plague, which from the looks of them, they probably do, because we don't have the firepower to take them on. At the end of the utility corridor, we find the game's first safe room. You can save at the fireplace. I know how surprising you can save in the safe room. You would have never guessed that without my insight. But I really do like what Mara thinks whenever she saves. The fire is crackling softly. Staring into the flames, I feel something. It's a curious mixture of hope and dread. Maybe everything will be okay, and maybe it won't. I really like this little bit from Mara, and I think it perfectly fits the tone of the game, but we'll get back to that tone later, cause we're not done here yet. This is also where all the staff memos and tip magazines are stored. You'll find staff memos all over the park. These are all hints at what you should do next, though they're not all in order. You'll find a lot of memos way before you actually need them, which can make figuring out which memos are actually useful to you right now a little bit annoying. The tip magazines are a lot less important. They're exactly what they sound like. They're just gameplay tips. Some of them are useful, some of them are so painfully obvious that it fucking hurts, but it's a neat way to tell the player how to play without interrupting the game. Of course, the most important part of any safe room is the theme, and this one is just delicious. The soundtrack as a whole is great, it's nice and relaxing, but it's also really creepy when it needs to be. We also find the first log from Tolman. These logs are scattered through the park. This first one tells us about how a man crawled out of the pool, but something was wrong with this guy. Lastly, there's a memo telling us that to get into the fairy pond, we'll have to say a specific phrase. Which we do, then we make it into the pond, fix the filter, and solve a quick little puzzle to obtain the bronze key, which will then give us access to a couple new areas. So the game's structure basically boils down to finding an item that you can use to then unlock new areas or open rooms in previous areas. So this obviously involves a lot of backtracking, which I know isn't everyone's favorite thing, but I don't mind it here, mostly because the map is very compact. The rooms aren't that big and there aren't that many rooms in each area, so making your way around the park is pretty easy. And this is another reason why the variety in rooms helps. It keeps things from getting boring, cause every room looks unique. It also makes it easy to remember which room's which and where they all are. Hell, even the utility halls, which should look boring, still look distinct from each other. Okay, but that doesn't mean much if what you're doing in those rooms is boring as shit. But like any good PS1 wannabe, it's got a large focus on puzzles. And these puzzles aren't boring, they actually require you to use your brain a little bit. Like, for example, this puzzle to get the gold key. You learn from one of the memos that the key is hidden in the head of the fairy in the feeder, so you can just shoot the head off. But the key's in a block of resin. Now, you should probably be able to just shoot the resin to break it, but we'll just ignore that for the sake of the puzzle. There's a sprinkler system, though it doesn't really seem that useful, but you can find a jar of acid somewhere else in the park, and after refilling it, you can pour it into the sprinkler system to melt the resin. Sure, it's not like it broke my brain to figure it out, but the solution made sense. It felt like a logical series of steps, but it also wasn't so obvious that it felt like an overextended button prompt. I've had experience with those. Looking at you, the evil within. Basically, in short, puzzle good. Except for the gas exhaust puzzle, that one sucks. There's also all the secrets hidden throughout the map. A lot of these are upgrades for your shooty things, like these laser scopes, or these cute little mushroom guys that'll upgrade your weapons for you. I didn't find all of them because I'm not smart enough to solve all the puzzles, and I'm not patient enough or insane enough to try and brute force them. After beating the game, you also unlock the Crow Quest, which involves finding a crystal crow in every room on the map and then shooting them dead. Luckily, there's an exploration mode where there's no enemies to make this a little bit easier. Though it's kinda funny that the spooky danger music still plays despite not actually having any enemies around. And what do you unlock after painstakingly committing mass genocide on all crystal crows? Yep, that's it. So, now that we've got the bronze key, we can go to the Haunted Hilltop, aka Spirit Halloween on steroids. Hey, before we move on though, quick question. Have you subscribed yet? No? Well, go do it then. And like the video while you're at it. There's a woman banging on a big fuck off door. I mean, this door basically does everything short of having a sign telling you to fuck off, to tell you to fuck off. But whoever this woman is, she's very determined to get past this big fuck off door. This is Julie. She's a lawyer, so the worst kind of person. And she's here to talk with Mr. Crow. It's very nice that we also just so happen to be looking for him, but, well, we're not telekinetic, so we're gonna have to find another way past the door. So we solve a simple little piano puzzle and make it into the northeastern utility hall where we find more guests. At this point I actually had enough ammo to actually take them on, so I decided to do the same thing to these guys that Makima did to these guys. Unfortunately for me, not them, Mara doesn't have a contract with the devil. she just has a gun. So instead of turning them into goop, I had to settle for shooting them in the face and then stomping on their face. I do like the combat, it's undeniably clunky, but that's the point. Obviously it's going for that PS1 survival horror clunkiness, and obviously I don't know how well it emulates it, but it definitely felt weird at first. But after getting used to it, it's pretty fun. Whenever you try to aim your gun, you're forced to stand still. You can't move, but the monsters still can, and shooting enemies point blank obviously deals more damage, so there's a little bit of risk-reward to the combat. Sure, you can deal more damage and use less ammo, but that also means letting the enemies get close. And those bastards are fast. Oh, and if you've got an unholy amount of PS1 nostalgia, or you're a masochist, you can play with tank controls, which in case you don't know what tank controls are, which I couldn't blame you for, no reasonable game in the last 20 years has used tank controls, but tank controls are basically just not being able to strafe left or right. You can only walk forward or backward and then turn left and right. It sucks, it's slow, but it's nostalgic for some people. But if you're a sane, reasonable person, you can also just play the game like any other game, thank God. Either way though, Mara's pretty slow. The monsters aren't too fast either though, which is good, cause again, you're completely stuck while aiming. Some of them are a little faster, but most of them are slower than turtles fucking. Though they move like Jojo Siwa, so hitting him is a little difficult. And my aim was slow as fuck because I played with a controller, and if you're wondering why I play with a controller, it's simple. It's because Steam told me to. This is a survival horror game though, so ammo scarce. The game encourages you not to fight every monster. A lot of the time it's better to just ignore the enemies. Though you can also use the obligatory explosive barrels or bear traps to kill the monsters while conserving ammo. But later on, new traps start appearing around the park, like these ungodly crow heads that vomit poison in your face. I hate these things with a burning passion. But they make it so you gotta stay aware even while you're dealing with the monsters, which I like. But what's a survival horror game without a shotgun? You can find the shotgun in the Ocean Kingdom submarine, though you gotta play a little shooting minigame. There's also the flamethrower. For both of them, the main use is simply having more guns to shoot things with. They're not necessary, but they definitely make it a lot easier. There's also the Magnum, but the ammo for that one is very difficult to find, and I never used it. All of them are missable though, even the shotgun, though that one is pretty hard to miss. But I like that you can just go through the entire game without them. Anyways, we encounter Edward Crow's daughter, Natalie, at the back of the utility hall. She's not looking too good either though, so we give her an antidote. She's the one that reported her dad missing, but we're apparently not who she expected. She asks what happened to the officer she called, and we tell her that he's, got something more important to deal with. Crow's office is also right there, but we need the gold key and the door's electrified, so that's not really an option right now. There's also a dead guy in the other office, and from the looks of it, he removed his soul from his body through the use of a bullet. But before he turned his own brain into Swiss cheese, he recorded a tape explaining that he decided to take himself behind the barn because of the guilt over what happened to Elaine Marshall. Of course, he doesn't actually explain what happened, he just says some vague shit. Anyways, we leave the brain-dead dumbass to become one with the carpet. So instead we make it into the crypt where we solve probably my favorite puzzle in the game, and then the game cock-blocks us. Or, I guess shotgun blocks us. Because they dangle a shotgun right in front of you, but... Thanks, game. Anyways, this also happens. This is one of the 4 mini-bosses in the park. 3 of them appear in puzzle rooms like this one, where you're stuck with them until you either kill them or find another way out, while the last one simply stays in the northwestern utility hall. You don't have to kill any of them, but you really should. Not just because they're disgusting or because you get a tasty achievement, but also because they're not just gonna disappear, you know? They're gonna stay there, and you're gonna have to deal with them each and every single time you go through those rooms. But I also really like their designs. All the enemies have good designs, and there's a surprising amount of variety in them as well for how small the map is. You've got lanky boys and these little goopy guys that are more of a nuisance than a real threat. There's obviously these regular guys, they're slow and don't do that much damage. But then there's also these big ass titans that take an ungodly amount of ammo to kill, so just use your grenades on them. I love their designs and how different they all are. But unfortunately, I don't really think they're scary. I don't really think that the game is that scary in general. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. The first simply being the graphics. I think they're just a little too simple and a little too cutesy to really be scary. But to be fair, I've played games that on the surface don't look that creepy. Like Darkwood. But Darkwood scared the piss out of me. So I think that the real reason that Crow Country doesn't really scare me is just because the game feels too comfortable. I never really felt stressed out while playing it, which is something that I think a game does need to be scary. It needs to stress you out a bit. I think that's the main reason why Darkwood or Amnesia the Bunker do scare me, is because those are stressful games. Of course, that's just my opinion. Maybe it's different for you, but for me, it just didn't really hit the right way. But that doesn't mean it's a bad game. In case you haven't noticed, I like this game quite a lot. And it does have some more unsettling moments, like this scene in the theater. This was pretty creepy the first time, especially with how the music comes in and with the maybe dead, maybe not baby looking things just casually sitting around the place. Or this area in the Ocean Kingdom. Nothing happens here. There's no monsters. But this place feels creepy as fuck. What the hell is making that noise? You know what? Don't answer that question. I don't want to know. But overall, it just didn't really scare me or make me feel on edge. Okay, I'm just gonna speedrun the rest of the game a bit. We find a hand crank in one of the utility halls, find a cop named Harrison in the center of the park. He's the actual guy sent to find Crow, cause Mara's actually a fraud. Harrison tells us that we should probably not be here, but there's not much that he can do to stop us, especially cause we've got a gun, and he's just got a shitty bike, though I guess you could use that as a weapon. Though, in my calculations, gun still probably beats bike. So, we open up the gate to the Ocean Kingdom, meet a sweaty guy called Marvin in the arcade. You can find notes from him around the park, which explains that the park was part of some sort of weird gold smuggling scheme. Though the gold seems to be coming from the park itself and is then shipped to a mine in Brazil. We solve a puzzle in the diner, obtain the silver key, and make it into Tolman's office. Now, if you'll remember, Tolman's the guy who left that log in the first safe room. He's clearly the guy working on whatever shady shit's going on beneath the park, but he doesn't seem to necessarily be a bad guy, because he doesn't attack you, and he doesn't try to stop you from activating the elevators into the underground. Sure, he also doesn't help you, but that's probably because he doesn't want you to get ripped apart by the unholy abominations down there. Anyways, we solve another piano puzzle that I thought was more difficult than it actually was. I thought I had to do some 4D chess type stuff to figure out what keys I had to press, but no, you just gotta watch these tapes and then press the chords that you see on the TV. So, we activate the elevators, solved your stupid puzzle. Come on, be honest, you loved it. Yeah. So we make it into the underground. And I love this place. This is definitely the creepiest area in the game, and it feels really eerie because this place is clearly suspended in the middle of a void. There's no rock or anything here. The place is also filled with the aforementioned abominations, so you should probably run the hell away. There's 7 gates around the walkway, but they're locked right now, so we go to the only other way we can go, and enter the break room. We pull the root access lever, and then get out of there. Oh shit, there's a big boy here, and he wants to hug you like this guy.
I went up to her, I hugged her, and I came in my pants.
So instead, we shoot him in the face, and then he explodes, leaving behind the license plate. We input the code from the plate into the door and get the hell out of there. We now have access to the outer rooms, where we find these weird things. They're called roots. They don't really look like roots though, in fact, they look pretty metallic. This is where the gold's been coming from. In one of the rooms we find a wooden model for what we can assume to be the landscape, and it looks like the land is held up by whatever these roots are, and there's something all the way at the bottom. Anyways, there's not much we can do because the access to Crow's lab is locked, but there is an elevator hidden in the central area of the park. It's hidden behind the Crow statue, but it's powered down, so we gotta steal a battery from the mermaid in one of the rides. We get Julie to help us with that, but she gets dragged into the vents. Well, guess she's dead. Also, this happens while we're leaving. Then we shove the battery into the Crow's back and activate its walking cycle. And just like that, he walked out of my life. Then we take the elevator down. We run past some guests, find Harrison dead, and solve a simple little puzzle. We encounter Tallman again. He tells us that we really shouldn't continue, but we're obviously gonna continue because the game's not just gonna end here. But just as we're about to enter Crow's lab, Marvin shows up with a gun. He basically explains that he's gotta tie up loose ends because the cops are on his trail for the whole gold smuggling operation. Well, guess Julie isn't dead. But Marvin probably is, though maybe I shouldn't say that because my predictions apparently suck. Anyways, we tell Tolman and Julie to go wait with Arthur in the parking lot, and then we go into the next room, ignore the suspicious puddle of water, and take the ladder down. This is probably my favorite moment in the game, and you're literally just going down a really long ladder, but the music really gives it a feeling of finality. I half expect the game to just end right here with it's just going down into the darkness, but this isn't the end obviously. You finally reach the bottom, and from the looks of it, Crow's not having a good day, because there is a lot of gross meat juice all over the place. You can also turn on the shower and wash the dye from your hair, so you turn on the intercom and tell Crow you're here to, as my Italian uncle would say, have a chat. He tells us to take the vials from his desk with us, so we do, and he opens up the door, and we finally reach the pool. And also Edward Crow himself. We confront Crow, and it turns out that we really are here to just have a chat. And it's time for a plot twist. You see, Mara is actually the aforementioned Elaine Marshall. She was attacked by one of the guests back when the park was still open. The park had to close down because of that, but Elaine was now infected, and she's simply here to tell Crow that she's dying because the doctors can't find the cure. Crow explains that he's also infected, which you could probably tell by just how gross he looks. He also explains that the pool is a portal, and that the guests are just people trying to get through. But because Crow's been mining the roots for their gold, the portal's highly fucked up, and is now highly fucking anyone up who goes through. Crow also says that the vials that Mara picked up are actually a cure. There's 5 of them, so just enough to cure everyone. Though, there's 6 people infected, counting Elaine as well. But Crow says that he's not gonna take the cure because he's kind of an asshole, because the first guest that emerged from the pool could actually talk. And Crow's known since then that harvesting the roots has only made the pool more fucked up. But he continued to harvest them anyways, cause money. So after explaining all of that, he tells us that he's going into the pool, gets Elaine to promise to kill him if he comes back out, and then he T-poses into the pool. But I mean, I'm sure he couldn't look that bad.
Oh my goodness!
Bro, you look like the ass cancer of an ass cancer. You look like the aborted aftermath of a Last of Us bloater and Halo Flood getting it on. You look like my mom. This is the final boss, and it's pretty cool, though it's also pretty easy. Honestly, if there's one complaint I have, it's that the game can be a bit too easy, but the devs already said that they're gonna add a hard mode, so that's gonna be solved pretty soon. Anyways, we bring him down, he tries to tell us what's on the other side, but Lane doesn't want to know, so we take aim, and we fulfill our promise. So, I've kinda glossed over the plot so far, because it's kinda a lot. but I'll try my best to explain it. So back in the 50s or 60s, Baby Crow and his daddy went out camping in Condor Country, a horribly misnamed part of Georgia. The state, not the country. While camping, they found the tips of the roots. Crow's dad circumcised the roots and found gold inside, so he bought the land and renamed it Crow Country. Now, the next part of the story is a little hazy, but from what Crow tells us on the phone, it seems like his dad wasn't able to really get the operation going, so after he died, Crow returned to finish what his daddy started. So he built the park over top the roots, then began excavating them. Of course, selling gold cylinders is a little suspicious, especially if you can't explain where they're coming from. So he got his buddy Marvin to buy an abandoned gold mine in Brazil. Then Crow would crush the gold cylinders and embed the gold into rocks at the park, then ship them to the mine. Then Marvin would sell them from there. But while exploring underneath the park, Crow found the pool, and eventually the first guest emerged. Crow captured it and moved it up to the holding cell on the surface. This first guest could talk and told him about what was on the other side of the pool, and he wrote it down. And Crow actually gives what he wrote down to Elaine at the end of the game, and you can read it in your inventory, and from what we can make out, it seems like the world on the other side is a future apocalyptic version of Earth, and the guest came here to warn us. In 1988, Elaine went to the park with her family and encountered the guest in the utility hall. She was attacked and the park subsequently closed. Elaine got infected and her parents tried to sue Crow. Crow didn't really give a fuck though, cause he was also infected. He also continued harvesting the roots, which further destabilized the pool. Along with this, more and more guests started coming through. It seems like the pool was some sort of contingency plan for whatever disaster was happening in the other world. Eventually, in 1990, Elaine broke out of the hospital to confront Crow, and that's where the game starts. From there, we help out Arthur and Natalie, we deal with Marvin, or more accurately, Julie deals with him. And by the way, Julie's actually Elaine's parents' lawyer. Crow's not been showing up to court, so Julie showed up here to presumably drag him to court. Eventually, we confront Crow, he explains everything to us, turns into an abomination, we shoot him, cure ourselves and everyone else, and have a cookout in the desert. And that's basically the plot, and I like it quite a bit. The characters are pretty well written, which is kind of impressive considering how little you actually interact with them, but their personalities and motives are pretty clear. Mara/Elaine is a pretty good main character. The game's also surprisingly funny, in case you haven't noticed yet, but the game overall has a pretty serious and creepy tone. So is Crow Country worth the $20? Well, let me channel my inner salesman and answer that with another question. Is there any other horror game more worth the money? There definitely haven't been any good AAA horror games lately, well, except for maybe the Resident Evil 4 remake, but what else is there? More importantly, are they really worth the $70 whole ass dollars? This one's only $20. Sure, I wasn't really scared while playing, but horror's subjective, so maybe you'll be shitting bricks if you decide to play it. And also, the game has good combat, a great atmosphere, good story, and overall it's just a good game, so in my opinion, it's absolutely worth the $20. I certainly liked it, but you know, that's just my opinion. Some people will probably absolutely despise it, and you're allowed to feel that way, but I liked it, and I hope that there will be more games like it, because I really want more actually good horror games. Anyways, I have questionable choices to make. Bye.